of language, what is underlying this gift is the ability of understanding. Understanding. Which is that we have fiqh, and he'll go into these terms, right? We can gain knowledge. So we have understanding. Allah has given the human being the ability to understand with the intellect. But the intellect by its nature has problems. One of the major problems of the intellect is that it's a triune intellect, right? You have three brains in your head. You have this R stem, you have a midbrain, and then you have this frontal lobe. In our tradition, and this is confirmed by science, even though they knew this a long time ago, the R stem is the amara. It's a reptilian brain, right? And most of the people in power are functioning like reptiles. That's why there's all these crazy theories about them being reptiles in reality and remove their masks and they're really lizard people and things like this. That is because they behave like reptiles. Now, I spent my summers on a cattle ranch when I was young, so I spent a lot of time with lizards. There were lizards all over the place. I used to watch them. They're very interesting creatures. The Arabs say, أحير من ضب, more confused than a lizard. And I understand what that means. Somebody can hear that, but if they don't know lizards, they won't know what that means. Because a lizard, when it comes out of its hole, it's like, it looks so confused, you know? But one of the things, lizards are always petrified. They're just in a state of fear. They're always afraid. And so the reptilian brain, at the root of it is fear. It's fear. But it has another quality, fear and desire. And so this is the shahwa, right? The quwwa shahwaniyah. This is the concupiscible soul. It's the soul that desires food, desires sex, desires security, all these things. That's the nature of that soul. So it functions at that level, and that's why it's very primitive. And propagandists, advertising agencies, they understand this very well. And that's why they control the masses through social engineering by keeping them in this brain. This is where they keep the majority of human beings. They're in this brain. And it's a very low brain, but there's a reason why it's there. It's not a negative thing in and of itself. It's negative when it overrides the other brains. Imam al-Ghazali called this the pig. He called this the pig soul, that its nature is like a pig. It just eats and eats. It'll eat its own young. That's what a pig does. A khinzir will eat its own offspring. And so in that way, if it's left to its own devices, it becomes destructive. The midbrain is the center of the emotions. And this is, in our tradition, called the quwwa al-ghadabiyya, the irascible soul. One of the things that, since we're in Mawlana Rumi's city, one of the things that Rumi said is the reason God prohibited alcohol, I mean, this is his hikmah. You can't really say other than, I mean, Allah said that it's harmful, but it says that shaitan wants to sow hatred amongst you. And so what Mawlana Rumi understood from that, he said the reason that Allah prohibited alcohol is because most people, if you remove the veneer on their intellects of rationalism, they become angry. And that's why drunks often become very belligerent. And so he said it's really veiling people from this aspect of themselves. Because if you haven't controlled yourself, if you haven't learned to control yourself, you have this anger in you. And that's why the Prophet, when the man said, Awsini ya Rasulullah, he said, La taghdab, don't get angry. Awsini, la taghdab, 3 times. Don't get angry, because this quwwah is very powerful. Now this quwwah is actually, it has a purpose. And its purpose is related to the nafs al-lawwama, because its function is to get angry for the right things. It's to blame what's wrong. And so the irascible soul has a very important function. But the highest, and this one Imam al-Ghazali called the dog. The dog. This is the dog soul. Because the dog is a guard. This is the guardian soul. It's a guard. And then the last one is the quwwa aqliya. It's the faculty of intelligence or intellect. Aqliya means to, intellectus, it means to read inside, is one of the meanings. So it's an internal, it's something that happens inside of you that's related to the furqan. It's an intellectus. It's what is able to discern right from wrong, true from false. And that's why this part of the brain needs to rule these two. But what happens is this overrides this and this overrides this. And so you have the markub becomes the rakib. The beast becomes the rider. And the rider becomes the beast. Right? It gets flipped. And this is unfortunately where most people reside, in these two lower dimensions. So there's pigs and dogs. You know, there's just people that are consuming and not thinking about the consequences of their consumption. And then there's just angry people that usually aren't able to consume because the consumption is being withheld from them. And so they live in a state of resentment, envy, and anger towards the people that live in the pig state. A little harsh, but that's pretty much what it is. Because they quickly join that group when they get into better circumstances. So this one he called the sage or the sheikh.